10 looks good.
All right. So 6:31, we'll call the meeting to order. Quick roll. Derek.
Here.
Charles not here. Craig.
Yeah.
Mitzi.
I'm here.
And George.
Here.
Others, Laura from the school committee, Don Potley, Board of Selectmen, and a couple other members from the Freetown Finance Committee. Is that correct? Excellent. And just so from a membership perspective, Charles Sullivan with the reorg of Freetown Board of Selectmen will be the representative on this committee.
Yes.
He will not be here tonight. And Craig, you are
From the,
Finance Committee, you're going to be the representative
Yes.
going
He
forward?
will be. We just haven't got the
Yeah.
paperwork done yet.
Okay, got it.
There's a vote tonight on it, but after that, hopefully,
All
I
right.
think Craig will do a great job.
thank you.
So, a number of things, quick things we wanted to run through tonight. One, obviously, is the intro of Ashley Lopes, our new Director of Finance. She has, I know from the school committee perspective, we have met with her a number of times. I know some town representatives have met with Ashley in a brief intro personally. So she's going to do a quick intro as well as give an update on a number of different budgetary items, including where we're at with the closing of FY 18 and how things are running into FY 19. So you do have in front of you a number of different handouts. Obviously, going forward, you will have these in time before the meeting. They will send them electronically, and we will go over these appropriately. First thing, anyone recorded the meeting outside of LakeCAM? Right? But first thing on the agenda, the acceptance of minutes from April 12th, earlier this year. I'll entertain a motion to accept.
So moved.
Second.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention?
Abstain.
All right. My hope for this year, as far as a theme, is to continue the success that we had last year with this group, was able to make a budgetary recommendation to the full school committee. I hope that we continue that trend, have some good conversations about how we best move forward. But I first want to welcome Ashley, especially her first regional FinCom meeting in the role that she has. And I will kick it off to you for review, and we're going to start with a PowerPoint presentation. Is that correct?
So in front of you, the PowerPoint's kind of my presentation. It will lead us through all the different aspects of the budget that I want to talk about. But included in that packet behind the presentation is the updated FY19 assessment sheet, and then the 18 budget and the 19 budget. It's the extended budget. I wanted to print it for you for the first meeting. Going forward, we can shorten it, or if there are certain things that this committee would like to see, I can adjust for that. So just on the PowerPoint, I wanted to introduce myself. Started July 1st. So far, the transition has been great. I got to meet with most of the district on the school side, and I got to stop over. I spoke with Lakeville Town Hall last week, and I met with Nate Darling and did a walkthrough through AES, which was great. I'm learning as I go. Kathy, who was our assistant business manager, has been a great help to me, transitioning from where Fred left off. So a little bit about myself. I'm coming from Weston Public Schools. I was the budget analyst there for the last 3 years. We have a very detailed budget there, so that's what I'm coming from. It's on the website if anyone wants to look at it, feel free to. Before that, I worked at Ernst & Young as a tax accountant. I started off in the Stamford, Connecticut office and moved to Boston halfway through my career there, and decided that I wanted a little bit more of that quality of life. I wanted to see my family a little bit more. That's why I moved back to Massachusetts. So I went to the public school system, and it's been very rewarding. I went to Sacred Heart University, accounting background with a minor in business administration. So that's a little bit about me. As we keep going, I wanted to start off with the 18 general fund overview. The appropriated budget was $36 million. To date, we closed out the FY18 payroll, and right now it looks like we have a surplus of $29,000 that will roll into E&D at the end of our close this year. So the first slide is just a very high level. This number will match your packet below for FY18. The second slide of 18 general fund is just each of the units and what their expenditures were for the year. I think it's important going forward, we see how much each unit spends. And please stop me throughout if you have any questions or want me to go into more detail. It's really just an overview to start, and the discussion and conversation can go where you want to lead it. E&D's on the next page. The FY certified amount was $80,000. Right now, it looks like, again, we have a surplus of $29,000 that will roll into E&D. That number is subject to change. We haven't closed out revenue yet for the year. We're working on that. I'm confirming the state numbers, and we should be doing that by the end of the month. So the next meeting, I'll be able to give you a better update on that. The miscellaneous receipts, there's $30,000 in that account that will be rolling into E&D. That is insurance claims. We also have had some Freedom of Information Act requests, and they've been charged to do the printing and things of that nature. Let me get you even more information. So the insurance was about $10,000 of that $30,000 revenue, and then our homeless transportation reimbursement that we received from the state was about $19,000. So those are the big items that are in there. I just wanted to give you a projected FY19 E&D. We're going to start with at least $140,000, it looks like right now. And as many of you have seen the updated cherry sheets, it looks like we're receiving additional funds from the state with Chapter 70 and 71 funds. It's an estimate right now. Hopefully that will come true, but we'll know more as the year progresses. To date, we've also received $14,000 of insurance claims, and that's due to the water pump booster over at the middle school. Went down earlier in the summer, and the insurance company had said that they would reimburse us for repair, not an upgrade. So that's where we stand on that.
So, it only took me like 4 minutes to not interrupt for the presentation, but I just want to add, because I know some town officials did get an email from Fred prior to actually coming on
Yes.
board with some concerns about potentially having to go to town meeting. It does not appear at this time that, based on a couple of alternatives, that we're going to need an entire new system, which was the thought process. It looks like through insurance, but also some repair, we're able to maintain both short-term and long-term. It's kind of a piece, and I only share that because there was one email at one point that looked like we were going to be coming to you folks looking for special town meeting approval, and we're not in a position right now, it appears, to have to go that route. I can get into more details, but Ashley's been overseeing that with Bob Souza, our Director of Facilities. One pump is being upgraded and another is functioning, and we feel the system, which is housed at the middle school for the campus, will address what we need to do without a total new system, which was the concern at the time, and at least what we had heard initially was the only way it could be fixed. So Steve?
Yeah. Can I just,
Yeah,
can we,
of course.
can you carry the baton a little bit? Let's close the loop back with town officials. There were several
Sure.
people that were emailed on that.
Sure.
Just so that way it's off of their list, what have you,
Definitely.
that is not anything that we have to do. So if we could just close that.
Of course.
loop. And then the only question that I would have would be, and we can talk about this more at a full school committee, is what is the life expectancy at this point, and what should we be planning for from a time frame perspective of the replacement? The concern is if we do have that situation again and we're not planning for it, shame on us. So
Yeah.
if we could have those questions answered, that would be great.
Definitely.
Definitely, and that is part of a report next week with the school committee,
It
our
is.
school, full board.
It is.
Okay.
Rick stole my thunder a little bit. It was in the facilities update.
He does that quite a
All right,
bit.
Ken,
No.
do
No worries. So also in FY19, the expected E&D will also have $125,000 in it. That's what was discussed during the budget conversations last year. We are monitoring that line, and the expectation is that we'll have that $125,000 at the end of the year.
My expectation is.
Not 150 as I watched on the video.
It's 125. Are we all in agreement with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
Um,
I looked at the minutes
Yeah.
before I approved them.
No worries. So I would just have an expectation that we monitor all of these numbers, right, and make sure that we're on path to do that.
Yes.
Obviously, if something has changed, it should come before the full and to see what we can do about that. Knowing full well that these state numbers may change between now, but I would just have an expectation that we monitor not just the 125, but also the this particular, the Chapter 71, especially if the state numbers change or if anything changes in that. I wouldn't think so, but that would
No
be.
problem.
Any
So-
other questions related to that?
So right under the packet, and that's a great lead-in, is the FY19 assessment sheet. And you'll see on it that I included the April 25th voted assessment sheet and then the numbers as of August 16th. So anything that's shaded in that bluish gray have been changes that have been updated for the cherry sheet and any of the state numbers. It looks like this.
Gentlemen, you guys, so it's not part of the PowerPoint, but it's right below that.
On one
It is part of
page.
your packet, it's one page. Which needs glasses, at least I need
Sorry.
glasses.
I'll get them out electronically earlier next time, so you
Yeah.
can at least see it on a screen or. But as we go, my goal is to bring this updated sheet to every regional FinCom meeting, so we're on the same page. When there's changes, I'll note the variances and let you know where the changes have been made. Right now, I had a meeting with the state last week, and their expectation is that 70 and 71 are going to hold true. And they're hoping that the circuit breaker will also, the reimbursement percentage will be higher than last year, but we'll see what happens as the months go on.
So I'm just going to ask a question about circuit breaker. So because that's also, subject to state appropriation and everything that comes through, so we never really see a true up of the circuit breaker account, between the assessment, and I know it ends up being a year later, when you actually kind of get it through. But I think, if we can trace, I was just put a word together, it was great, so that we can actually determine what is coming in for special education costs for the surplus, because last year, I'm sure you got all up to speed on everything that was happening, but we had talked about the special education revolving fund, and so that did not go through.
Right.
But that's certainly an area where we know that there's additional spend that happens every year. That's probably our biggest area of concern in terms of the uncertainty of that number within the budget. But I think it'd be helpful if there's a way to just take that number and kind of track it out between what we have for reimbursement, what was expected, what we're spending in special education costs. And I know we've talked about, we don't need to know who, we don't need to identify anybody, we just need to know what are we spending, what are we getting reimbursed for, what's the total spend that's different from previous years. I think that would be really helpful for this committee.
Sure, I could definitely do that. One of the ways we're meeting, actually, the finance department, myself and Liz are meeting on a weekly basis to go over out of district. So
Great.
I'm very up to speed on what we're doing and where we stand. So I can provide that to the committee. It's not a big ask.
To be said, Liz is the new
Sorry about that.
Director of Student Services, if you haven't put the name.
Okay.
So, but that's. Before we go down the road of the data, I would like an agreed upon format.
Sure.
So if you could put together a format as far as the columns and whatever, let's send that to the committee, get some agreed upon. What I don't want to go down is, we put all this data together and then it doesn't meet the needs of what we're looking for. Does that make sense to, let's agree upon a format and then we can sort of.
If you want, I worked at E&Y in Stanford and Metro Park, so I'm good.
Right.
So
we'll
my
be-
expectation of it, this district uses the funds as they come in. We do not have a year of wait, so when they come in, we'll know, last year was at 65%, that's not what anyone had budgeted for.
Right.
So we're budgeting for 65% right now, and if that number changes, you'll see it on the assessment sheet, but I'll also be able to bring in some of the number of what our tuitions look like and what the offset circuit breaker will be.
Perfect.
On the next page, on page 4, you'll see the FY19 general fund overview. The number's $37 million budget. We've had about $3 million of expenditures to date. And the available budget is roughly $12 million right now. We're tracking it very closely this year. We are working with a lot of our groups on overtime. We're really looking at maintenance costs this year. Bob, Susan, and I are working closely together to make sure we're keeping up on the repairs and maintenance, and we know what we're projecting out for the year. The next slide, FY19 assessment sheet. As we kind of alluded to earlier, there's been changes since April 25th. We've had an increase in enrollment, not very many students, but 7 students to date. the increase in Chapter 70, 71, and then the increase of required local contribution. So again, if you look at that one page, you'll see the changes noted and the variances there. Right now, it looks like there's about $374,000 that we have additional funds of. That being said, we might not receive all of the local aid, but I will keep you updated on that number. Any questions?
The 7, that is not the school choice number, that is the moved into the district.
Yes. This does not include school choice.
The school choice number that's referenced on the slide that she shared, 75, is projected. We typically have about 55, 54 students, and obviously the previous assessment reflected a smaller number. We are anticipating more school choice students. We obviously will have it reflected when students actually show up to the door. We did expand school choice to the elementary level, though, and we took a conservative number, and it's still built in there, and we'll have a better idea as we have future meetings whether that held true or not. But we did open up school choice at the earlier grades, and as a result, feel we'll have more students coming into the school district at those grades.
I'm trying to word my question carefully here. Of the 7 students, is there impact to the special ed budget based upon those 7 students?
She's right, when you reference the 7 students, you're referencing the assessment.
The assessment of the state. The
number.
state provided
So
these numbers.
that's not.
These are state
We're
numbers.
not talking new students. When she says new students, she's talking new as
On
it
the
relates to
assessment.
Assessment.
Got it, okay.
Sorry for the confusion.
But we'll go over enrollment numbers in October as far as net new
Yeah.
from that, okay.
And actually, the school committee will go over in September when we get our numbers about how many students came in, which is really,
Got
I think,
it,
your question
okay.
in the summertime and the needs and services provided there. Yeah.
Okay.
On the next page, it's the facilities update. So I've been here for about 30 days, working days. We've spent about $30,000 of unforeseen maintenance and repair costs, so about $1,000.
Not a ratio either of us,
Yeah.
by the way.
So
I've
that's gonna
reminded
be
her, like, so if it's
$365.
$1,000 a
not the
day, you could do the math, right? That's not. We had this conversation about that, and when she said that, I've been here a month, but it is the reality.
It is. Like I said earlier, Bob and I are having daily conversations. It's very important to me to get a handle and understand the maintenance and facilities issues that we have on campus in our 2 satellite schools. As Rick spoke about the water pump booster, we initially had one vendor come in saying we completely needed to replace the unit, and it would be about $55,000, and we would need to go to town meeting in the fall. We since then had another vendor come in, take a look at it. They said it could be repaired. The unit itself is in fairly good shape. It's just the boosters themselves that needed to be upgraded. So Bob went to the insurance company, and they agreed to reimburse us for that.
And just so for clarification, it was determined that it was storm-related when we had the second vendor in, which made it permissible under the insurance piece. So that was significant. That was not what we had originally thought with the pump. We thought it was simply maybe a deterioration, but it was directly related to storm and shutdown that caused that. So that's kicked in the insurance claim, and we were cautiously optimistic, I'll be honest with you, submitting it, and it did come through.
And that's one of the reasons why you haven't heard from me yet about the booster, was because we were waiting for them to take the pump and start doing their repairs to make sure that this was going to be successful. The vendor is confident that we will be able to operate for a few years, if not a little bit longer, with this upgrade and this rebuild. So one of the boosters is out right now. It'll be back hopefully in the next week or so, and then the second booster will go out to be repaired and upgraded. Here's a list of a few other things that have needed repair and maintenance. We have a couple of the fire panels in the schools that are older, and they're not going to be supported any longer by the maintenance companies. So those are things that are going to be on the list this year of, do we upgrade the system, and what does that look like? Right now, I can't speak on behalf of what our thoughts are, but those are things that are coming down the pipeline that I just wanted to share. And then some of the other things, exciting things that have been happening in facilities, our irrigation system is up and running, which is great. We only had 4 zones earlier this year, and our maintenance person, Greg Goodwin, was able to troubleshoot and fix the system. So now he can let the irrigation system go and water on a timer, and he can be out doing other things. So that's really a win for us this year.
So, and just for the backup, picture me here 5 years, this is 18 years old that the system hadn't been functioning. So it was set up and structured, and it really took our in-house guys. So now we have a situation where Bakerfield, all the entire campus. One thing we're going to take a look at, and maintenance is currently taking a look at, is a couple of the football turf field, stadium field, and the baseball field run through the campus water within the buildings, which doesn't really make sense, quite frankly. All the other water comes around that system, and there is a way to kind of do that as well, which will take some pressure off the schools, and we're kind of exploring that. But as Ashley kind of pointed, it's kind of nice to have an assistant director of facilities, a great good one, someone in-house who kind of has the course, and obviously we're saving a ton of time, because now we don't have people manually out in the fields doing that type of thing. It's been a tough summer too, as we all know, with our own homes and lawns and so forth, but no real cost associated other than obviously some piece, and pretty exciting in relation to future.
We've also had some maintenance within the building. So we had a new water fountain replaced in here in the library. We've also had 2 sinks put into 2 different classrooms in the high school. We were repairing tile at the intermediate school, so that will be done before the start of the school year. And at both of the elementary school, there were broken pieces on the playground, and at both of those locations, the pieces have been ordered and they should be installed before the start of the school year. So we're definitely going through that maintenance list and checking a few items off.
So a lot of those items obviously were budgeted for. The list that she's provided in this slide are things that were not anticipated, although, to Ashley's point, and she's again 30 days in, it's something that we are going to have to take a look at, those fire panels, for example. She spent her last Friday afternoon,
Did.
when she texted me, because basically the system was down. You can't leave the building unattended. It's Freetown Elementary School. So you either are going to fix it or pay someone to physically be there by law. So, the issue was we obviously took the repair and it's up and we were able to do that. It's something we're going to have to talk to the town of Freetown though about. Ashley and I have had a conversation. I mean, we just signed a new lease agreement with the town with South Coast Collaborative to rent 3 classrooms. So the town of Freetown will receive this year a $60,000 check because it goes directly to the town. So it may be the way to offset if we do have some plans in place for some capital needs at the Freetown building, like we would do in Lakeville. It may be something we kind of talk about as a way to potentially not add an additional burden to the town, but take advantage of some monies that's coming in. We do rent space here at the intermediate school, which is the Lakeville building. We don't rent any space at Swampscott. We just don't have the space in relation to that piece. Otherwise, the town of Lakeville would be in the same circumstance. That lease agreement would be with the town. Here, it's an additional $30,000 that goes directly and offsets tuition, special education tuition. And it's part of the budget.
Before we open it up for questions from the committee and the audience, particularly to FY18 and closing that out, can we answer the question on staffing? Has there any, my understanding and from the school committee perspective, we had 1 new position that was budgeted, which is the media specialist. There were no net new positions hired, correct? Can we just talk a little bit about it? I know we had a new program that we added, but that helped on the budget side. Can we just?
Yeah, so I think the key there is net. We've hired a couple of individuals to offset, and so I'll kind of go through that. We've hired about 20. I'm going to give just the general picture. I'm going to give the school committee a little bit more detailed piece. So the 20 people that have been hired this summer have filled retirement positions, resignations, the standard circumstances. And then we had a couple of unique circumstances where, for example, at Freetown Elementary School, in lieu of 2 paraprofessionals that retired, we hired a classroom teacher. So net 1 teacher, so we have hired 1 additional teacher, but offset by not hiring 2 paraprofessionals.
Is that a special ed teacher?
It is, yes, it's a special education teacher to address supports for students. It's a new structured setup. At Lakeville, and in Swampscott, we have created a program, a special education district program, so now students from Freetown or Lakeville can go there at the elementary level. Swampscott did not have that program. We have one similarly at Freetown Elementary School. And as a result, we have, right now, I know of 3 students, I think there's a 4th student, who would have had to been out of district. So I want to be sure when Steve says net, the town officials understand, we did hire a new teacher. They are a special education teacher, but it is in lieu of tuition costs that would have been out of district. So there's the adjustment, and that's where Ashley kind of showed that big picture down the line. Other than that, everything else is pretty straightforward, right? We have a retirement and director of finance, we hire a director of finance. Student services, we hire a director of student services. We have a teacher leave, either residential or retirement, and we're monitoring that closely. And I really have given Ashley a ton of credit. We're starting to address line items within the budget to accurately reflect where salaries should be. They've always been there, but, someone has always been in this category, and it didn't really make sense, and she's starting to clean that up a little bit. But I'd be happy to answer any issues. So to Steve's point, other than those couple of exceptions, they've been straight replacement of people that are either retired or resigned.
Any questions from the committee?
So the only question, it's more of a request, and I would assume Freetown may enjoy the benefit of this request too. So everything comes back to marijuana, right? So the issue that we have, of course, is we're going to need to start justifying funds for what we're receiving in for our marijuana fees, because Lakeville has embraced all types of licensees coming in. I think Freetown has cultivation and medical. So I think that, just to kind of keep in the back of your mind, I think portions of, obviously, a school resource officer, is going to be an element where, we would be looking at that expense as a justification of some of those costs, along with maybe even some of the nurse or the psychological, services that you have. But if you do any programs specifically related to that, I think it would be helpful for the towns to know, that these are costs that you're spending that we could then, allocate, because as we're funding the schools, then at least that would be something, for us to justify if we need to do that. It's going to be a nice accounting exercise for all the cities and towns to do that too, so.
Sure.
The facilities update,
Yes.
Ashley, on Assawamsett, there certainly has a number of rooms that were repainted, spiffed up, carpeted, taken out, replacement tiles, and they're in the middle of doing an energy grant for approximately $250,000 to $300,000.
Yes.
And we certainly have encouraged the school committee to embrace and do energy grants for the school campus, if you will. Lakeville, on the Lakeville side, through grants and through their own money, should be putting about $300,000 or more into that.
I did meet with Nate last week, and he walked me through the building, and he showed me the upgrades and the things that they're doing now and through the rest of the summer, and then the upgrades they can do during the school year that won't impact the classroom.
We expect to do a similar number of upgrades, but not an energy grant next year.
Right.
And just to
That would be part of the campus.
follow up on the energy grant, with that, the school department has applied for that grant. We were originally denied. They recently came back as approval, do that first step. So that first step is underway in that case there, so. And is that correct?
Yeah, I don't have any more detail
I
than
don't
that.
have any detail on that. I'll follow up on
We'll
it.
give an
then.
update, though.
Derek?
Are there any unfilled positions currently that you're still looking at?
Yeah, so if you look at our website right now, we have a special education administrator position, the person who chairs team meetings, so that it's not a teaching position for the 3 campus schools. That position is currently open. We're interviewing. We have 1 paraprofessional position at the middle school, a replacement position, and a couple of monitors.
So in pretty good shape at this
Yeah,
point.
we're, all superintendents, look to knock on wood at this time of the year. Someone rolls in with an opportunity and it comes in. When they come in to see me this time of year, a teacher, I'm always a little anxious because but at this point where, in my 5 years' experience, where we are, August 16th, we're in relatively very strong shape in relation to support. We did not have, and I'd like to think it's because people are very comfortable where we're at. We did not see as many, so one of the concerns was with our demographics changing and new staff coming in, that their loyalty and sense would be that in a competitive nature, there'd be a lot of shifting and movement. We didn't see a lot of that. So we've been able to not only attract what we think are quality individuals, but retain. all the individuals. If you look at the 20 replacements, they were 10 or 11 retirements that we knew about, anticipated. And then we had some other, from a personal perspective, resignations and movements that are pretty common nature type of thing. Someone's, married and relocated, that type of circumstance. But overall, and they're on the website, we're in good shape right now.
Any other questions on FY '18 or where we're at with FY '19? Okay. I know we have the full reports here. I know we have discussed that this is probably not the best method, so this may be the last time we see these.
I'm sure.
Not so much from the.
Can I at least get them emailed to me then?
No, you want this?
This isn't even that big. I went through it in like 5
Oh, I
minutes.
know.
Yeah. With that being said, we are going to do an effort of, I hate to use the word going green a little bit, but we are going to start by
Email.
having Chromebooks here for the meeting, so that way you'll have it electronically, but you'll have it here, so that way we're not printing out so many different copies of everything, so we could definitely go through that. The other thing on the agenda are meeting dates for the year. The school committee will be receiving a full budget calendar at the next meeting to review, but these dates sort of coincide with that, with the ultimate goal that this committee provides a budget recommendation for that. I would still like to continue the practice of ensuring that we have a quorum, both from a standpoint of LakeCAM and make sure that we respect everyone's time coming to the meeting. I know everyone's busy. So that way we can manage. But this is the tentative calendar for the year for the regional FinCom. We'll try and keep them as short as possible, but as we get into budget season, we know how difficult that is. Any questions on this?
I may not be able to make a lot of these, but
I'm open to suggestions. I just put it out there for us to try and do, and we tried to, and we, just like last year, we moved some dates around, but I just tried to
yeah.
get topics out there, what have you.
Yeah, I know Tuesdays generally would be better, but I know, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I'll put someone else on the committee. So,
And again, if we just keep the lines of communication open, we did that towards the end of last year too, about discussions around the best way to move forward. I think that'll help as well.
Yep.
So we can definitely keep that in case. And then there's some other dates down below that not necessarily for us to attend. It just talks about the plan for the budget presentation for the school committee, as well as tentative thoughts on town meeting date, because that's where it ultimately comes from there. Questions on that? We did talk about FY '19 as far as the new thing, but there are no questions, correct? All right. I'll open up to see if there's anything else that this committee would like to discuss. I will bring up one thing. Obviously, our next meeting that we want to have is Thursday, the 4th of October. By then, we'll have our new school year rollout, so we'll have some information related to that. But then, we'll be starting, when I say will, the school committee, as far as recommendations to the administration for the budget for FY '20. I know that's a scary topic, but I'd like to at least to start that conversation rolling for the next meeting that we have here. But also, one of the topic areas that we talked last year is some fiscal policies around that. One of the areas that I will have on the agenda for the next meeting, but I'll put out there for discussion, is the district has done, I'll say the administration, of managing the budget at a $36 million level. We've talked about it from a finance perspective of bringing that down a notch, so we need to start managing a little bit closer at the department school level, and you see some of the numbers already. One of the recommendations that we'd like to see is more of, hey, instead of the line item transfers, at least seeing some line item transfer report based upon a certain value. So that way we're not holding maintenance custodial to pay for some educational pieces without sort of having some information to this body and to the full school committee. So I'd like to sort of have that discussion, that we can give feedback. This is not the first time that Ashley's heard about this, and quite frankly, she has been supportive of something like that as well as Rick. But I'd like to add that to the agenda for next time, so we can give a recommendation where we'd like to see that for the full school committee as well.
So with regard to the policies, I think, we had talked about that last year.
Yep.
And really looking at, what are the overall fiscal and financial policies of the school district in its budgeting process? And I think I'd like to make sure that that gets to be a topic that is on discussion.
So the challenge is the fiscal policies for regional districts are at the state level. There's
Well-
really nothing around that sort of has it, so I think we're starting from scratch in some of those.
Right, because I think it's more along the lines of state comes out with an assessment change. I don't want to reinvent the wheel when it comes to creating the budget every time we turn around, because we've got, we have the variable of the state. We know we've talked about the 2.5% increase in theory of what, is out there. I'd just like to have those discussions before we have numbers in front of us. Because I think that's what we should be doing in the fall, as you're talking about the 19 or the 20 budget, 19 budget, is really, I guess it's 20. As we look at it and we say, well, what are the issues? What are we facing from the town level? What do we see and anticipate? Let's start that conversation before we have any numbers in front of us, because I think that it's important to at least have that dialogue, because the minute that the numbers come in and then guess what, it's the end of February and now we've got these preliminary numbers, but then they change 6 times, so we're not really sure, what to do with it. But I think just memorializing the process, or at least talking about it, might be helpful for at least new members of the committee when they come on to see what we've been doing. Not that you have to participate in past practices, but I think that it's been at least a good learning experience in terms of George's phone buzzing like crazy.
Well, I think
That's the first
it's a-
policy that I would
Yeah.
enact.
There's two sides of that coin. There's the state numbers that we receive for prior year, like we have right now, right?
Yep.
We don't know if those will actually stay the way they are. We hope they do.
Right.
What do we do with that? But also, what do we do that from a budget preparation perspective? So I
Right.
think there's two sides to that.
Yep.
But first and foremost, the fact that it's being communicated and you're being communicated
I know,
on the
it's great.
assessment side of it, I think is a major change. I welcome that. I think it's going to
Absolutely.
be
Yep.
something, we've talked about transparency, that right there, and now the task for Ashley and her group is, let's track that, where that is, and if that's going to deviate from that number, that's a discussion that we need to have so that everybody's on the same.
Well, and I think too, we talked about this last year in terms of what constitutes the triggering point for if there is a major improvement and going to the towns, and having that dialogue and having that conversation, because I don't want it to be well, we could have, but we didn't. I'd rather have that conversation of what are some of the circumstances by which, we need to have that dialogue happening sooner rather than later, because we have fall town meetings, we have spring town meetings, but, the likelihood of, and it could happen, to have a even secondary special town meeting in December, January if something goes wrong and we need it. But I just want to try to anticipate those issues that we've seen over the past 5 years, really, with regard to, again, the required local contribution changes, things like that. If it changes in a completely disproportionate way, how are we going to handle that? I don't want to sit here and have a friendly lawsuit again. We did that route. But I think there's things that we can do to not have that happen. And I think, I'm thrilled with this packet. So in 30 days, you've really quite made the impression.
I think one of the things this group will see is as she's sharing as much detail, this is just a sliver of kind of what she's been putting together, because our 20 budget, it will more accurately reflect the reality and the money being spent in specific line items. And I won't bore you with the detail, but we've always captured the big picture, right? But it's been to take from here and there. So her analysis has been already, in the short time she's been here, multi-year. To take a look, she kind of made reference to overtime and things like that. So
Right.
we didn't build money in for those types of practices, and yet the money came from somewhere else. At the end of the day, it came out solid, right? But we also were using some flawed mechanisms to get there too with E&D, and we're trying to work
Right.
that through. So I think the 19 to 20 shift that you're going to see presented by her is there going to be some changes in some of the specific line items but there'll be enough data that I believe people will be very supportive and comfortable with it, because she'll be able to say, the reason I'm making this or recommending this adjustment is because you really did spend that amount of money every year.
Right.
It just came from some other location. So that's the kind of the drill down I think that this group will, whatever report comes back, we'll see kind of reflected in 20.
Yeah, my favorite was always textbooks. Where
Good.
it was,
They do.
you know, well, it came out of somewhere else,
They do.
not the line item that says textbooks. You know, just trying to make sure that, you know, I think that's going to be really helpful for town-school relationships, and really kind of making sure that we have transparency, and that's always been the big thing. So I think we're all, you know, in a better position financially than we were a few years ago regardless, between the towns as well as the school district. So I think this is a good platform to start from.
Dirk?
Yeah, and I think one of the other things that will probably be a surprise is we talked about, you, myself, and Steve talked about not netting figures in a budget and showing the actual expense with an offset. So that way we can clearly see and track where those funds are coming from and why they are what they are. And when we start seeing what those real expense numbers are, they're gonna jump out a little bit. Then we'll apply the offset and get us back to
Right.
where we should be. But we wanna see all the
Right.
information, not, sometimes those net figures change because of reimbursements in states, and you're like, why did it change so much? And
Right.
we really want to see, track the reimbursements and grants or whatever offsets there
Right.
are. So that's another goal that we're looking to do, but obviously, nothing happens overnight.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and the revolving funds too. And, you know, we've got those funds that have always kind of been an enigma, and they sit over there, and we see the balances, but not really seeing the ins and the outs. I think that'll be helpful, you know, as well.
I don't know if you missed it, but in the very beginning, I would strongly encourage you to look at the last budget that you prepared in Weston. And I think it gives the level of detail that we need, not in a 6-inch binder. That'll be a budget savings right there, because it's not. But I would encourage you to go there and download that aspect of it.
Yeah.
I think you'll see that level of detail that.
Great.
This is, I mean, if I guess, this is what I can say. The only thing I would caution you about is if you would like us to have the same amount of staff that.
I'm not saying look at the
Weston-
numbers, I'm looking at the
Weston
format.
had. So, well, I just want to be sure before the interpretation is that that's what we're going to mirror. I think there are aspects of it that I've said that she can bring in with her support staff, and I use that term loosely, the support staff, but it's a different.
yeah.
It won't be,
Yeah.
FY '20 will not be the Weston budget, but there'll be aspects that I'm going to take from
Excellent.
my
With
prior.
a Freetown-Lakeville flavor, how's that to it?
Anything else?
Just a quick question on the school choice. Sure. 75 students, as Rick had said, we typically have about in the 50s, 50 to 55.
Yep.
So is the real number, because the assessment, is the real number this year expected to be 75?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So.
So the expectation.
School choice will.
So we're anticipating receiving
25
additional,
more students,
yes.
Or thereabouts.
That's the anticipated, and that's what it looks like right now, correct?
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect.
Ultimately, what's the revenue source is obviously what the number actually is. So we've received 275 and those types of numbers. So we're anticipating receiving additional revenue because we're anticipating seeing additional students. That's correct, Jen?
The 75 matches the 375 offset
Yeah,
of
the
the assessment
$5,000.
for school choice.
Right, so
$5,000
you're
per
not
student.
really taking excess money out of school choice, it's more of a match.
Correct.
As we move forward.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Anything else? I'll make sure that we're all on the same page. Before we adjourn, a follow-up email to the towns about the water
Yes.
pump booster.
Yes.
We'll also get agreed upon special ed format, and then we'll provide that data there. And then we'll add fiscal policies to the agenda going forward. So next meeting will be October 4th. There was just a question on time. Is 6:30 the earliest that people can make it?
Coming from Waltham?
The dance schedule is horrendous this year.
We don't want to know what your dance schedule is. We're
You
trying to
don't,
find out. So we'll keep it at 6:30, 10:04.
I keep that to myself.
I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's the last order of business.
Last thing, yeah.
I'm assuming no one's opposed. All right, thank you, guys.